Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Hello and welcome to the Skeptic Zone, episode number 251 for the 11th of August 2013. Richard Saunders here with you from Sydney, Australia. What an interesting show we have lined up for you this week. My good friend, my dear friend who I haven't seen for a little while, Dr Phil Plait, is in town. And just the other night, I went along to hear a public talk by Phil, Death from the Skies, accompanied by Joanne, Benhamu. And after that, we were very lucky indeed to visit the Sydney Observatory with Phil and get some behind-the-scenes, a little behind-the-scenes tour, I guess you would say. We went up to the top of the observatory and saw the city at night. And then we went in and observed some stars and planets. Now, this is your chance to be an eavesdropper, as it were, a little fly on the wall in the observatory as Phil Plait and I and Joanne Benhamu peer into the telescope to look at the wonders of the cosmos, you might say. That's coming up at the top of the show, and I hope you enjoy that. Following that, it's an interview with Tim Farley from whatstheharm.net. What's the harm, you might say? What's the harm? Find out more with Tim Farley from whatstheharm.net. And then we'll round off the show with a week in science from the Royal Institution of Australia. Yes, a slightly shorter show this week, partly because I'm very busy at the moment preparing for the Mystery Investigator show. My good friend Ian Bryce, who does the show with me sometimes, and I will be performing at the Australian Museum for lots of kids, lots of high school kids this week coming up. When are we performing? Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday, I think, and then the following week we're doing some shows for some younger kids. Science Week here in Australia, and the Mystery Investigators love to get out there and do our show about questioning claims. Now, somebody else who likes to question claims is none other than our very own Dr. Rachie, Dr. Rachel Dunlop. Dr. Rachie will be speaking in Canberra on the 17th of August between 3 and 4:30 p.m. The location is Questacon, King Edward Terrace. And I think people in Canberra certainly know where Questacon is. It's free admission. Wow. Free admission. What more could you ask for? Now, Dr. Rach is going to be giving a talk, Thinking Outside the Box, How Blue-Green Algae, Coconut Bat Soup, and the Jungles of Guam Provide Clues to the Causes of Motor Neuron Disease. Good heavens. I think the message there, folks, is don't eat that bat soup. For more information, go to www.canberraskeptics.org.au. And I'm sure Dr. Rachie, when she's in Canberra, will be hearing more interesting and exciting details about the upcoming Australian Skeptics National Convention, and we'll play the little promotion for that towards the end of the show. Dr. Rachie, not to be missed. Well, that's all from me at the moment. I'm just going to stand up here, walk over to the other side of my office where... Hello, sweetie. This is Adele. Hello. And she keeps me company up here in my office sometimes. And she's rolling on her back, looking too cute for words. Yes, hello, sweetheart. There we go. Now, I thought I'd just give you a little bit of cuteness into your life, folks. What do you say, Adele? There we go. Well, you going to stay there? All right, you stay there, Adele. Lie in the sun on top of my my little wardrobe. While you're doing that, yes, I'm going to run downstairs. I'm going to find some miso soup. You like the miso soup? Yes, I thought so. Or maybe not. I'm going to find some miso soup, which I quite like. Yes, and we'll all enjoy the Skeptic Zone.
I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Phil Plait. Thank you,
Geoff, and thank you everybody for coming. It's very, very exciting to be in Australia. I love this country. You guys are so cool. Everybody said, what's the best part about going to Australia? And I said, being surrounded by Australians. Also standing on my head and seeing all the upside-down constellations you guys have here. Watching Orion come over the horizon upside down is something that will stay with me the rest of my life. That's seriously freaky. And the other night I saw Alpha and Beta Centauri and the Southern Cross, which I don't get to see, as well as Sagittarius and Scorpius overhead, which does not happen in the Northern Hemisphere, so that's very cool. It's really, really exciting to be here. Also, you guys I can just go into a store and buy Minties. I can't do that back home. Or Tim Tams. We've been eating Tim Tams all day, so they're good. So it's a real pleasure to be here. The last time I was here was actually 10 years ago. I was brought here by Richard Saunders, who is in fact in the audience with the Australian Skeptics, and did a wonderful tour, and I'm doing a few cities here again. Sydney reminds me a lot of San Francisco where I lived, and so when I come here it's like being home, and then I see kangaroos hopping around. So yeah, it's a good reminder I'm a long way from home. So years ago, as Jeff mentioned, I studied supernova 1987A, which is a star that exploded in another galaxy, but relatively close by, and you could actually go outside and see it with your naked eye. And I always kind of liked exploding stars. I grew up learning about neutron stars and all black holes and all that great stuff. And I've always been fascinated by that sort of thing, these epic disasters. I love disaster movies. I mean, I think most people do, right? And I like going on roller coasters and being scared, and I know that at the end I'll be able to get off and be happy and just remember the thrill. And horror movies, thriller movies are like that as well. So if you combine these two things, and you like gigantic, catastrophic cosmic events, and you like talking about sort of threats to life, it's very easy to mix those two, it turns out. So that's what I'm going to be talking about tonight.
I'm at just an amazing situation, my friends, with an amazing man, Dr. Phil Plait. Hello.
Hey, Skeptic Zoners.
Hey.
Nice to be back on.
We are on top of the Sydney Observatory. We are on top of the Sydney Observatory.
This isn't a place you get to see very often.
And it's a brilliant night. The moon is setting over there with Venus bright as I've ever seen it in the city.
It's pretty good.
And the whole city is just laid before us, all lit up.
Yeah, we're standing in front of the harbor, and you can see the Harbor Master Tower, the bridge, and if we turn around here, of course
Luna
you can't
Park
see that.
there,
Luna Park and the magnificent Opera House.
It's all there for us.
It's hard to... I can't believe I'm standing here again.
And you were just commenting on that every time you come to Australia, which isn't often.
Which is now twice. Yes, including this one.
You look up in the heavens and you're thinking you're standing on your head. It's just so funny to hear you talk about it.
It's odd. I mean, we're here on the observatory, and I can look out over the bridge in Luna Park, and I can see Vega and Altair, and these are very familiar stars. But if I turn a little bit to the left, and I guess, I'm facing west, and I can see Saturn and Spica and Arcturus, and these are all very familiar stars. But because in the northern hemisphere we get them.
Yeah.
And then I turn, toward let's see, that's south, and it's like, oh,
there it is.
That would be the Southern Cross and Alpha and Beta Centauri.
There they are. Yeah.
The rest of Centaurus and Scorpius is straight overhead. It's crazy. It's so weird. You stand at one latitude and spin around, and the stars rise and set, and you're used to that. But when you go north and south, you're seeing different stars because the Earth is no longer in the way
right?
of those stars. Yeah. It's just, and the first night I got here and saw Alpha and Beta Centauri, and it's just, God, I love that. It's like, that's the closest star system that we know of.
And there they are.
And there it is.
And there
right
it is.
there.
Right there.
Bright as
looking up them.
Incredibly bright.
And you were saying just before that when you landed, you were looking at the Magellanic Clouds?
Well, no, it was up, but it was getting too bright. I landed at about 5 a.m., and I was at the Brisbane airport and walked outside, and I was looking at a star, and I'm looking at it thinking, it's the right color and the right brightness to be serious, but I don't know. And if that's serious, then that one's Canopus. But I had to pull out my iPad and start fiddling with it, and it's like, oh, okay. And then I realized I was looking at Orion upside down. But the longer I waited, the brighter the sky got, and then it was too late to see anything. Yeah. But that was pretty slick.
Later tonight, maybe you might have a chance to see some more as the hours go by.
Yeah, it's
although there's a lot of light pollution.
7-ish now. Yeah, I don't know if we'll be able to see the Magellanic Cloud, but it's rising right now. But given that I spent 3 years years, many years, multiple years, looking at supernova 1987A using Hubble, and had never seen the Magellanic Cloud, and then came down here back in 2004 with you, and saw it for the first time. You brought me up to Stromlo.
I remember.
Went up the hill, and you guys, you jumped out of the car,
and I pointed at it.
And I walked out of the car and looked up and just saw it, and I was just standing there like, oh my God,
there it is.
And I got a big lump in my throat, and I was about ready to weep. It was so beautiful to see that for the first time. I was expecting like an Andromeda galaxy, and it's so much better, so much bigger and brighter.
We're in the observatory now.
People say that.
Well, I've studied this. I've got a million spectra of this from STIS.
Phil Plait is looking at something in the flesh, may we say?
In the hydrogen gas, yeah.
What are you looking at, Phil?
So there's a star called Eta Carinae, and it's it's about fourth magnitude, something like that. And it's a supermassive star. It's one of the most massive stars in the galaxy. It's called a luminous blue variable. It's a very blue star, and it's very luminous, and it's variable. So, what do you call it?
Something Pamela Gay might investigate.
She does variable stars. I don't know if she does this kind. This is an extremely massive star, 80 or more times the mass of the sun. It's basically at the upper limit of how massive a star can be.
Wow.
It's unstable. It's basically so hot. Actually, and Amanda's tapping her foot. I think she wants to come in too. We got a bunch of astronomers here who want to see. And so this star, the surface of the star is unstable. There's so much energy pouring up from below that it wants to blow the surface off. And they're very unstable. And 150 years ago or more, the star had a massive outburst, a paroxysm, and it blew off these two lobes moving in opposite directions, like an hourglass. And you can see them. It's a 16-inch telescope here at the Sydney Observatory, and you can see them. In this event, the star got tremendously bright. It was like, I think it's the second brightest star in the sky. And what the event was is it erupted with these two lobes, and together those lobes themselves have about the mass of the sun. That explosion is basically second only to the star blowing up.
How many light years is that away?
About 7,500 light years. And Eta Carinae is an interesting star because it's going to explode someday. It's going to become a supernova. Nobody really knows.
Already has.
Yeah, it's possible. It's one of the few stars that's actually far enough away.
The one looks slightly bigger than the other. Is that just that it's a bit distorted?
I think one's brighter than the other. So it may look bigger.
Yeah. Joe Benhamu is now peering through the telescope.
And I had no idea.
Wow.
Yeah.
The smile on her face.
Well, I've seen Hubble pictures. This very famous Hubble picture of this. And we've observed it with the Space Telescope Imaging Spectrograph, which is the camera I worked on for a long time. And the spectra of this, when you break up the light into its individual colors, is a complete mess. It's really hard to interpret because there's just so much going on. But these two lobes, I never really thought about how big the lobes were. I've seen a million pictures of it. I never considered that with a relatively, I'm not going to call this small, but, it's not. This isn't a 4-meter telescope. You could slap an eyepiece in and be able to see them. That's astonishing.
I've got a question for the astronomers in the room.
In the dome.
So there is so much stuff out there to look at. So much. It's just ridiculous. How do astronomers decide what they're going to look at? Because there's so much to study.
I don't know. What's cool,
Yeah, but there is so much stuff going on out there. So, a particular star may or may not be doing something interesting at any one point, or a particular galaxy. How do you decide of all this amazing sky to look at, what is... is it just the images you get and that's what you...
Yeah. Well, in this case...
It may sound like a stupid question to you. In my head, it made sense.
That's pretty dumb. No, not at all. No, but we have maps up on the wall here. That's a computer display that shows the sky. And I was just looking at it, looking around. It's like, we've got... Centaurus is up, so let's look at Omega Centauri. It's a globular cluster in Centaurus. And my eye fell on Carina, and I just thought, that'd be nice. And I've never seen it, so why not take a look? And there it is. Oh my God.
While you're in this part of the world, why not?
Yeah, I'm not going to get a chance to see this again. When I'm looking at how low this is way below my horizon in Boulder. It's 30 or 40 degrees, I would guess. I don't know. But that's because there's the Southern Cross. Yeah, this is way farther south than I can see. That's magnificent.
From another perspective, if you want to answer a particular science question, then you have to figure out what things might potentially be the best way to actually access that science question. Or you could go a different way and say, well, I'm trying to answer this science question. I could do some different methods, but maybe I really want to use that great telescope that's in Chile. So maybe I can devise a clever project that would allow me to use that. Or I started to actually study things very, very far away in the universe, but they're just these little specks of light and not terribly beautiful. So I started to study near more close galaxies and more close galaxies because they start to get resolved and you can see these great spiral arms. So in that sense, I wanted to actually look at a lot prettier pictures in my my day-to-day life. So I wanted to do nearby galaxies instead.
Okay.
You just heard the voice of Amanda Bauer, a.k.a. @AstroPixie. Follow her on Twitter for dirty space news.
The official super scientist, actually, not for very much longer.
Yeah, it's true. It's whatever catches your interest. I mean, here it can be anything. Whatever is just visible. There you go.
Well, that's the telescope moving now. We're going to look at something new.
It screams because it doesn't want to move away from such a gorgeous star.
Yeah.
To North America,
The whole dome is moving, folks. We're going to swing this around and look at Saturn. It's quite disorientating being in a room which is moving around you. And the telescope
is kind of like a gas bubble come up and just
moved.
float out and that
Joan Benhamu steps up and sees Saturn.
Oh, wow. Oh my god, that is amazing. I've only ever been able to see it through my tiny little sky scanner scope where all I could see was just these two little ears winking at me.
It's like, oh, look at the comet.
This is just beautiful.
Can you see any of the moons?
Yeah, you can. Oh my god, that is just stunning.
You've never seen Saturn through a telescope?
I've seen it through my little sky scanner, but all I could see was I could just see tiny little ears winking the ears.
Oh, like seeing it through a big telescope.
Wow! It's so lit up. I suppose it's always lit up when you look at it from Earth, I guess. But
Can you see a gap in the rings?
Yeah.
yes.
That's the
Just,
Cassini division.
yeah.
That's a clearing of
So
the
I'm
rings
looking at-
by the moon minus.
I'm looking at
It
Saturn.
runs outside the rings, but
brilliantly
gravity
bright
pulls on
with
the
some
particles
moons
there.
dotted around it. It's quite something. I can see the shadow. Actually, I can see the shadow just behind Saturn. Saturn's casting on the rings. Wow!
Yeah, Saturn through
Wow.
a telescope is nothing like it.
I have to
That's
say, that's
something
actually one
else.
of those things like I've just waited to see.
Probably going to look at the jewel box now?
Yes.
Yeah.
The jewel box. Now Phil's walking over to the telescope. He's peering through, and
Yeah. No, wow, that's amazing. Look at the colors. It's called the jewel box because of all the different color stars. God, there's a gorgeous red star next to one that's just sort of dull and it's just white, but then there's a blue one on the other side.
listeners at this stage may Google the jewel box so they can see what Phil is talking about.
Yeah, you want to see pictures of this. It's very pretty. It's an open cluster, which means it's a collection of stars that probably form together, and they're just a tight little knot. There's, I don't know, a couple of hundred stars here. It's surprising to see this many colors, though. I wonder if that red one is it's got to be a red giant. If it were a dwarf, we wouldn't be able to see it. So it's probably a luminous red giant, like a star that's more evolved than the sun. It's very pretty. Go take a look.
I'll have a look. Just walking over to the eyepiece now, and
It's very pretty.
I'm quite impressed about how sharp the focus is. And yes, the colours are magnificent. Look at that.
Well, I just focused on the sun.
Thank you, Phil.
Phil, there's this nearby star, which is, a lot of people call it Ruby Crucis. It's one of the reddest stars you could ever see.
Oh, yeah. It's a carbon star, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Oh, carbon stars.
Is that like a Christmas song? Oh,
Yeah, oh, carbon stars.
Oh,
Yeah.
carbon stars.
Your absorption lines are confusing. We back in the day when I was working on Hubble, we got this image of these two stars. They were right next to each other, and it turns out they were in the Large Magellanic Cloud, a satellite galaxy to the Milky Way. Mm-hmm. And it was just a coincidental picture. Somebody was using another camera to look at something else, and our camera happened to be pointed in that direction. We took the pictures. And I remember seeing them and going, oh, they're almost exactly the same brightness. That's kind of neat. And we had spectra, which when you use a prism or a grating and break the light up into its individual colors, you can actually determine a lot of characteristics about the object you're looking at, how hot it is, what it's made of, if it has carbon, oxygen, whatever in it, a lot of different things. So I thought, I wonder what these are. Let me look at the spectra. And the spectra were crazy squiggles going up and down all over the place. Couldn't make heads or tails out of it. And a lot of times, for like a gas cloud or different kinds of stars, the spectra are very well behaved. You see a shape to it, you see dips and bumps, and you know what they all are. But these were just a mess. And then when I looked at both stars and compared the two spectra were almost exactly the same, which was getting to be really creepy. So I have two stars that are the same brightness and clearly something going on in them. They're the same. We realize they're carbon stars. They're highly evolved. They're very old stars like the sun that expand up. They turn into red giants. Mm-hmm. And they're very cool stars. They're red. But as they expand, the carbon in the atmosphere absorbs the light coming out of the star. So when you break that light up into a spectrum, you see all these sort of missing sections of the spectrum where carbon absorbs the light, and carbon has these crazy absorption lines that are all over the place. What's weird is carbon stars typically don't have similar spectra. And so to have two that are the same brightness, that close together, that are almost exactly the same, was freaking bizarre. And I've never been able to explain it. And they were about a light year apart. I calculated it. If they're at the distance of the Magellanic Cloud, they're a light year apart. It's way too far away from each other to be a binary star. They may have formed at the same time, but I couldn't understand why they would be dying at the same time.
That's not very far at all, is it?
They're
two stars to be hanging out.
Yeah, but they're not orbiting each other.
No.
A light year is tremendously far for two stars to orbit each other, but two stars a light year apart. I mean, the nearest star to the sun is
4?
Is 4,
yeah.
Right? So stars are more densely packed there. And I was totally baffled and would talk to a bunch of astronomers. Nobody could explain it. So I thought I need to talk to a carbon star person. I found a guy and said, listen, I've got all this free data. It's from Hubble. It's crazy sharp spectra. And it's a complete mystery. And he's like, I'm too busy. I got too many other things to do. I can't deal with this data. And mystery has never been solved as far as I know. We've never able to figure it out. It eats at me. It's been 20 years. So we're looking at one now. Does it look red to you, Joe?
No, it's blue to me.
No, but that's the one. That's the, if you like the reference. That's Beta Crucis, the second brightest star in the Southern Cross. Mm-hmm. Just look to the left.
To the left, yes, right next to the ridiculously bright one.
Yeah, right. This isn't the Garnet star, is it? No, Garnet is
very red
in the northern hemisphere.
No, I've not heard of it.
I'll wander over again and have another look through this eyepiece. Good heavens! Yes, I see the red one and the blue one. Well, you can't miss the blue one, can you? That's astonishing.
I'm looking to the finder. I can certainly see the blue one. It's very blue.
Yeah, it really is. And the red one is quite red and quite tiny compared.
What is Beta Crucis? Is it a B star or an O star?
O star.
Should we look it up, right? If only we had some sort of way of connecting to some sort of knowledge base. Oh, look at how red that is. That's phenomenal.
So Geoff Wyatt here at the Sydney Observatory, this is a tremendous opportunity that we're enjoying tonight, having a look at these wonderful stars. But the observatory is here for everybody in Sydney, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. So we're open 363 days and nights a year. I beg your pardon, actually we're not anymore. We've cut back on our Sunday nights.
Oh, yes.
So it's every day except Sunday and Good Friday and Christmas Day.
Fair enough.
But people can come along and have a look through our telescopes. And on a night like tonight, it's an absolutely spectacular view.
It's great. I mean, the moon is setting, so there's not too much pollution from the moon, light pollution there is. But I suppose when the moon's up and bright, it's wonderful to look at too.
Yeah, we love the moon. Obviously, the fuller it gets, the less you see of the faint objects, like we were looking at a moment ago. Eta Carina and the globular clusters, but it's a trade-off. The moon is the nearest, nicest, prettiest object to look at. Except, of course, when it's full. It's the worst time to look at it.
Right. It's overwhelming, huh?
Yeah, there's no shadows, so no contrast.
Right, yeah.
It's like staring at a light bulb trying to read 40 watts written on the bottom.
And what's the, if people want to find out more and want to come and visit, what's the website?
SydneyObservatory.com.
That's pretty easy.
It is.
So, Geoff, look, thank you very much for this opportunity. We're having a wonderful time, and Phil's just beside himself.
Yes, it's our pleasure. It's great.
Be Reasonable is a podcast from the Merseyside Skeptic Society, featuring Hayley Stevens and Michael Marshall. Each monthly interview explores beliefs from outside of the mainstream, engaging with proponents of those beliefs to examine the evidence and reasoning behind each idea. In July's episode, we speak with Andrew Burton from the anti-abortion activist group 40 Days for Life. Listen to Andy's story and back issues of the show by visiting merseysideskeptics.org.uk/podcasts or search for Be Reasonable on iTunes.
Delighted to catch up with an old friend of mine who I think I met originally in Atlanta, probably at a Dragon Con some years back. Yeah. Tim Farley, whatstheharm.net. Good to see you, Tim.
It's good to see you, Richard.
Thank you. It's day blip, 4 of TAM at the moment?
Day 4, yeah.
Thursday, Friday.
Saturday, Sunday.
I don't know about you, but I had a bit of a late night because the poker tournament went on.
Yeah,
until
I didn't
after
have a late
3.
night last night, but I've had some late nights. It goes, we start early at 8 a.m. and it goes well past midnight, so you can wear yourself out.
And, the coffee's gone, but just across the hall before there was this... Whatstheharm.net. How long has that been going now?
It's been going since 2008, so 5 years.
Same as the Skeptic Zone. How about that?
Yeah, that's right.
Because the Skeptic Zone was launched at Dragon Con in Atlanta 2008.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
And I remember that's where I met you, because that's where the first time I got one of your What's the Harm Got net cards.
Yeah.
And I think I even had a T-shirt at one stage.
Yeah, early on I had a few T-shirts just to promote it when no one knew what it was.
Yeah, I remember that T-shirt. And I certainly remember the cards, because I thought the cards were a nice, simple design.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so 5 years of doing the website, how's it progressed? How's it changed?
It's, it hasn't changed much. It's pretty much the same design. I've just added more cases. And actually, I haven't, I'm in the middle of doing a revamp of it. I've kind of gotten to the point where I've gotten too many projects. You know how it is.
Yeah, I know.
Where I have What's the Harm, and I have a blog called SkepTools, and then I do social media stuff, and I do some work for JREF as a research fellow, and it's tough kind of keeping track of it all. So one of the things I would like to do is get What's the Harm into a form where others could help me with it. And unfortunately, the way I originally built it, it's kind of tricky to update the site. I have to kind of do it myself.
You weren't thinking of that 5 years ago, were you? You just wanted to get a site out there.
Yeah, I just wanted to get a site out there that was simple, and so I wrote a piece of software just to help me manage the database. But I'm thinking I'll move it to some more standardized platform, like a blogging platform.
Give the site an overhaul, revamp how it looks?
Yeah,
or?
It will probably, I'll try to make it look very similar to the way it looks, but one of the things I definitely want to do is have the opportunity to have some longer content, because a lot of the stories are there isn't much detail to talk about. But occasionally you get a story where there's a lot of media coverage on it, and I'd like to be able to cover those more deeply, do longer posts about those. And the way I do the site now doesn't allow for that. So if I moved it to, say, a blogging platform, I could do that.
And over the years, how many new areas of interest? For those people who may be new to this sort of thing, whatstheharm.net, it comes from the expression people say, oh, well, you don't believe in X, Y, Z or this healing, but what's the harm?
Right.
Really. And your site says, well, here's the harm, and you provide cases.
Yeah, and one of the things I had noticed was it always comes up with homeopathy and several of the other things. And I had noticed when people do magazine articles about these things, it's standard sort of formula for magazine articles. You find a personal story, you lead with the personal story, then you flesh out what the details of the science are and why whatever this is bad, and then you give it a button at the end with the ending of the story. But each magazine article would have one story that reporter had found. And I had read several articles about some of these things, and it's like, well, there's this one story here, and then this other article has this other story. Wouldn't it be neat if we could put those all in one place so people could see all the stories and then link back to the articles? And then some of them just had never been collected. They were just little news items, because some of these news items will just pass by, and unless you're a skeptic and paying attention, you wouldn't notice that, you say, in an obituary notice that, oh, wait, this was a homeopath, and they were treating their cancer with homeopathy. And this is a What's the Harm case, and it needs to be in What's the Harm. So,
what were some of the things when you first launched the site 5 years ago? What were the topics? And added to that, what are some of the newer topics over the years?
Yeah, I started with, some of the classic alt-med things, stuff that I could find on some of the existing sites where the cases were there, but they were spread across different pages on the site, like Quackwatch and Australian Skeptic site, and anybody who had written about some of these issues, and just kind of going around and collecting the stories. So I had homeopathy and naturopathy and some of the religious topics, and then I tried to start to look for some more kind of off the beaten path things. So I added feng shui. At one point I found a very interesting story where someone ended up getting stabbed in a fight, and the fight was over feng shui stuff. It was just an amazingly weird story. And numerology. There were some people who got arrested because they were manipulating currency in Hong Kong simply to get bills that had the right numbers in their serial number.
Good heavens.
And they weren't actually stealing anything. They were just moving, they worked in a bank, and they were basically going through the money that was there, looking for the bills that had all eights or whatever the lucky number was, and taking those bills for themselves and then replacing them with other bills. So they weren't stealing, but it was considered impropriety to be messing around and they ended up getting fired. So I tried to expand that out, and I even added a category for GPS, partially so many of my categories have really sad stories, and the GPS page is something that you can just kind of laugh at, because the worst thing that happens on that page is someone ruins their car. Yeah. No one ever got killed, but they might wreck a car or something, run it into a lake or something like that.
Have you had criticism over the years? People writing into you saying, why is this on What's the Harm?
Well, every so often I get somebody pops up and says, why don't you include Big Pharma and all the people they've killed?
Right.
Right now I have a guy who is an HIV/AIDS denier. They deny that the HIV virus causes the AIDS disease and that the AIDS disease is actually caused by something else entirely, which is amazing that they persist in that, because we're successfully treating AIDS patients with and there's plenty of evidence for it, but they persist, and so he's emailing me. I don't get a ton. One of the reasons is that I don't call attention to the fact that the site is mine. If you look around on the site, you can find an email address and email me, and occasionally I get these funny emails where people say, you're obviously trying to hide because it took me 15 minutes to find this email to send it to you. And it's like, well, but you found it, didn't you? So I'm really not hiding that well, am I? So, early on I didn't even have my name on the site, and then people were very suspicious of that. So I added a thing in the FAQ page where I identify myself. But people always accuse you of being in the pocket of whoever their nemesis is.
Yes.
Big Pharma or big whoever. So, and I usually just try to send a polite reply. The recent guy was complaining that I didn't have comments on the site. And, so obviously you're not interested in free speech. And I pointed out to him, I said, you're completely free to post whatever you want on another website.
Yes, that's right.
There's only about a billion other websites that you can use to post whatever you want on the internet.
It's funny how people think that they have a right to dictate how you what you do on your own web page. Yeah.
But I knew all along I didn't really want to have comments on the site, because I just knew it would get out of hand.
It would. Even on Facebook, if I post a skeptical story, sometimes this can turn into hundreds and hundreds of arguments and fights. And so, I'm surprised sometimes people do that, because I'm a skeptic and I'm posting a skeptical story on my own Facebook page. What do people expect I'm going to put?
Right. Yeah.
But that happens. And what are the other projects you're involved with?
Well, I've got the SkepTools blog, and I do a segment on skepticality, kind of irregularly now, where I do skeptic history and then some of the stuff from SkepTools. So I call it Skepticism Past and Future. And the history thing has been an interesting sort of side thing. It started out as basically kind of a gimmick so that I would have something to post that was skeptical every day on my Twitter feed, even if I was busy and didn't have anything else to post that day. So every morning evening for your Australian listeners, but morning here in the U.S., I post, today in 1942, and it'll be something interesting to skeptics, some historical event or someone's birthday. And so researching that has led me to find a lot of interesting things that I've written articles about and stuff like that. And here at TAM, we actually had a whole workshop about skeptic history, which was interesting. And I presented some research that I did just trying to gather into one place a list of all the skeptic workshops and conventions and skeptic camps and symposiums that have been held over the years, and just to kind of find out, how many countries have had them, how many there have been, are there more now than there were before, that sort of thing. And it was interesting. It seems to match some research that I showed last year about the growth in skeptic podcasts. That since 2009, skeptic podcasts have just ballooned. Yeah. And there's over 100 of them now. And the same thing has happened with conferences. Just since 2009, there's been a huge jump in the number of conferences that you can go to. There's a lot in the United States, there's regional conferences. Just about every other weekend, somewhere in the United States, there's some sort of...
We're turning into Star Trek, aren't we?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think every weekend you could probably go to a Trekkie conference somewhere.
If you look hard enough. I think that's right.
Well, Tim Farley, the address, everybody, whatstheharm.net. Check it out. Next time somebody says, what's the harm in chiropractic?
Yeah,
what's the harm in acupuncture?
Just pushing your neck around.
That's right. You can go to whatstheharm.net. Tim Farley, thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard.
Jeg er Marit.
Og jeg er Kristin. Og vi vil tipse deg som norsk lytter av The Skeptic Zone om skeptikermiljøet i Norge.
Det finnes norske blogger og pubtreff og podcast, og foreningen Skepsis driver med ulike former for aktivisme.
Sentralt er skepsis.no, og her publiseres det dyptpløyende artikler, en kalender over skeptiske aktiviteter og lenker til andre skeptiske ressurser.
Skepsisbloggen oppdateres jevnlig, og det diskuteres heftig på Skepsisforumet, så stikk innom og delta du også.
Skepsis.no.
Hello, I'm Marit.
And I'm Kristin, and we want to let you know that there are lots of Norwegian skeptics for you to get to know.
There are blogs and pub meets and a podcast, and the Norwegian skeptics also do paranormal tests and consumer activism.
To find out more, Google Norwegian skeptics or visit skepsis.no.
This week in science, we saw a lab-cultured hamburger and more effects of climate change, this time on marine life. And did you hear the one about the cactus and the oil spill? This week, a beef burger was created by growing muscle cells harvested from a living cow. Theoretically, this is a way to produce meat without the methane and carbon dioxide production associated with cattle farming and using around 1% of the land. By this new method, one cow would make 175 million burgers, whereas traditional farming would use 440,000 cows. This $370,000 burger claims to be 100% natural beef with no unnatural chemicals. So would you eat it? More evidence this week that warming oceans are messing about with our marine life. An international team identified more than 1,700 changes in breeding patterns and habitat, including many in Australia. Marine species are shifting to cooler regions much faster than land-based species, with some moving towards the poles at around 72 kilometres per decade. The report also found that the timing of breeding and migration cycles is changing by 4.4 days each decade. The spikes of cacti have inspired a novel way to remove oil from water. Plastic surgery doesn't necessarily increase your attractiveness, but will make you appear around 3 years younger. Jumping spiders use a dragline of silk like a bungee cord, helping to stabilise their landing to hunt prey. And finally, dogs also suffer from contagious yawning and are more likely to catch their owner's yawn than a stranger's. Last week, we asked what food was more likely to win you a Nobel Prize. It's chocolate, of course. The paper is on our website, and congrats to Twitterers at @DocClock and @BlueNumeral who tweeted us the answer. This week, we're asking how dolphins recognise their buddies after 20 years. Is it by their face, whistle, flipper shape, or smell? Tweet me your answer at RI_AUS, #WeekInSci. That's it for this week in science. We'll see you right here next week.
Have you heard the one about how the Illuminati, in conjunction with the US government, are hiding the existence of aliens in order to ensure the supply of helium is kept low? Or that the CIA, the militant wing of the Freemasons, are working with the Elders of Zion to take control of the population of the world through fluoridated chemtrails? Canberra Skeptics Incorporated, on behalf of the Shadow Government, will be massing an array of dark forces for the Australian Skeptics National Convention 2013. This convention has conspired to coincide with the 50th anniversary of the assassination of John F. Kennedy, possibly the most famous conspiracy theory of all time. If you've ever wanted to learn about the truth behind the death of JFK, what makes for a good conspiracy theory and why they are so prevalent, Canberra Skeptics invites you to attend. That is, of course, should you choose to accept it. Come to nationalskepticsconvention.org and just remember, they will be watching you.
Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone. And are you still here, Adele? Hello? What do you have to say? No more interviews, eh? No more interviews today? Oh, I wish you could see this, folks. She's lying on her back in the sun, tossing and turning, looking up to me and say, "What are you doing?" On next week's show, I think we'll probably have some more Dr. Phil Plait. I'm going to be seeing him again before he leaves. Such a pleasure to see old friends like Phil Plait in Sydney. I love looking at the stars with Phil Plait. It's just incredible. We'll have some more Maynard's spooky action coming up soon and other bits and pieces. But until then, this is Richard Saunders and a very quiet little pussycat signing off from Sydney, Australia.
You've been listening to The Skeptic Zone. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for comments, contacts, and extra video reports.